performance training PST, day 12. Well, this is actually the conclusion of this audio series, and it is called The Basics of Living. Now, normally, in a normal person's life, I don't know what normal means by your standards, but by my standards, normal means most people get up in the morning. Prior to getting up in the morning, they actually sleep. Prior to going to sleep, they actually eat. And then throughout the day, depending on if they're athletes or non-athletes, they're usually working. And if they're an athlete, a professional athlete, an Olympic athlete, or even a high school athlete, they're usually doing some type of training once or twice a day. So those are the basics: eating, sleeping, exercising, and or working. So I'm going to really kind of focus on those three things, and then, give you my, explanation why those are the basics of living. Okay, here we go. The reasons why those are the basics of living are heretofore. I'm not sure how you say it, but essentially, if you do one of those inaccurately or incorrectly, it affects the other. So it's like a domino effect and or a butterfly effect. On the other hand, if you do all of them exceptionally well, now you have what I like to call high performance training. So what does accurate or correctly mean in this sense? To me, if you're a professional athlete or an Olympic athlete or a high school athlete trying to be a state champion, or maybe an Olympic athlete trying to be an Olympian or Olympic medalist, professional athlete trying to be a world champion or win whatever honor they have at their championship level, this means you need to likely be getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep each day. Along with those 8 to 10 hours of sleep each day, you need to have an adequate, if not super effective amount or nutrients going into your body. I was going to say amount of food, but food is part of it, but the nutrients is the bigger part of it. In other words, you can eat all types of foods, but if you get the nutrients misaligned or out of, out of sync, if you don't understand how to put the nutrients into your body, micronutrients and micronutrients, then that can you can either gain too much weight, or you can lose too much weight, or you just have an inappropriate amount of nutrients going into your body. So food is the larger kind of term, but the nutrients is really what we're looking at. So sleep is a huge factor. What we're actually eating is a huge factor, and how we are exercising and or training. And I said also, you could be, if you're not an athlete, you could be someone who's working, because to me, working and training, they're very similar in terms of concept. The concept is you're doing something to provide yourself a standard of living, whether it's going to work every day and making a living, and or trying to become the best athlete you possibly can be. And some people would say that's a full-time job in and of itself. So what's the point? The point is, again, as I stated earlier, if you can understand how to do those things adequately well, now you can have what I like to call high-performance training. What I also like to add in as an aside, but it's really not an aside, it's a part of the training, is the psychological skills training. So along with your training, and we're going to have a whole nother discussion here soon about periodization and the concepts that involve that, and we've talked about it a little bit, but an athlete that's training to be state champion, national champion, or world champion, or Olympic champion, they should be in a periodized training plan. So I sort of suggested before, accurately and correctly. So in an accurate and correctly designed training program, it's going to be periodized, and you're going to be working on specific things at specific times. You're going to have intentional and deliberate practices, so you're working on your strengths and weaknesses throughout the year, and you're going to be peaking for certain competitions. So you're not going to have too many competitions, you're not going to have too few competitions, you're going to have just the right amount. Now, that's going to depend on your age group and what your goals are per your training season. So I can't give you a broad stroke and say this is the right amount. It's similar with food as well, and really balancing and the quantity versus quality, those 2 or 3 terms, balancing quantity and quality, they have an effect on all of the kind of 3 things I'm talking about here. You need to get the right amount of, and then you can, put a little coal in there. You need to get the right amount of sleep. You need to get the right amount of nutrients. You need to get the right amount of exercise and or training. So again, going back to the training portion of it, you need to be in a periodized plan that's going to give you some type of tapering and or peaking concept towards your, end of the season sort of, culminating event for the year. Along with that type of high performance training, you would also have daily, if not more than daily, because sometimes athletes have 2 days and 3 days, psychological skills training. This whole kind of high performance training, PST, has been about, creating your own destiny with your mind. In that sense, the high performance training that you're going to be doing in a periodized training program, hopefully that will be set up by your coach. If not, again, we'll have another audio series so that you can make sure you're getting what you need in terms of the right amount, the right intensity, and peaking and tapering, so you understand those concepts and you know how to do them. Right along with that, though, psychological skills training should be built right into your program. In that way, not only are you getting tactically fit, strategically fit, you're also getting psychologically fit. And I'm using fit as the short word for fitness, because if you become fit in those 3 areas, along with the other concepts that we're talking about, you're likely going to be a high performance training athlete. The other concepts, again, the right amount of nutrients going into your body and the right amount of sleep. Now, those concepts are those 3 ideas that I'm kind of talking about. They're large and in charge. I like to expound on them because I think sometimes many athletes, they mess up one out of those 3 or 2 out of those 3, or, from time to time they can get all 3 sort of out of alignment, and they don't understand why there may be in a pattern that is less than successful or less than ideal, and they're questioning their coach, they're questioning themselves, and they may be questioning, why are they actually, participating. They maybe want to do well, and they want to excel, and they want to exceed their potential where they are right now. But there are some things that they actually have to go back and take a look at, and that's what all of these audio notes have kind of been about. We've gone through several different concepts with regard to PST, or psychological skills training, with tracking and monitoring, with looking for challenges, with looking for examples that are out there. And this last audio note essentially is a culminating event of all of them, suggesting that if you get the right amount of nutrients, if you get the right amount of sleep, and if you get the right amount of training, now you'll be where you need to be. I didn't specifically say what it would be in terms of nutrients, because everybody's going to be different, right? Younger athletes and smaller athletes are going to require a different amount of nutrients per their size and or their age group, because if you're pre-puberty, you're going to require a little bit different nutrients versus a grown adult who's not in puberty anymore, and their bodies, for the most part, isn't growing anymore. But to understand the concepts of how many or how much or what are fats, what are carbohydrates, what are proteins, and those are the macronutrients, and then of course the micronutrients would be like vitamins and minerals. To understand those concepts and how they actually work in your body, those are important concepts. With regard to the last concept that I talked about with regards to high performance training, all of that stuff needs to be in an area where that's you understand it, and then your coach understands it, and then you're applying it every single moment that you have the opportunity to. If you do that on an ongoing basis, I'd say you're very close to high performance training. Again, the idea is it's consistent. The idea is that it's happening all the time. So I'm happy that you're able to kind of listen to some of these audio notes and maybe get some new ideas. And then I suggest go back and listen to this again, because even though most of these talks have been 10 to 15 minutes, I like to suggest that each of those 10 to 15 minutes, if done on a consistent basis, they can help reinforce or fortify your training. They can help you become your best person. That's something that we haven't really talked about a lot. Comparing yourself to other people, I think, is, it can create a lot of stress for you. And I suggest with the tracking and the monitoring, you maybe want to compare yourself to yourself and see where you were versus last year and the year before that and the year before that. And that's a big part of those SMART goals as well, and some of the other forms that I've talked about. If you're able to do that, you will be maybe less stressful than you may have been in the past. Now, on the other hand, some people like to compare themselves to other people, and that creates excitement for them, and that's a big part of what we've been talking about. Ultimately, you have to find out who you are and what makes you tick and work best. Most of the concepts that we provided in this high performance training PST will help you actually improve and get better and strive for excellence. On the other hand, you may already be good in some particular aspects of them, and then maybe those are your strengths, and maybe you want to work on your weaknesses. You want to maintain your strengths, and you want to really enhance your weaknesses. So if you're good at one of the psychological skills, you may not need to completely focus on that 100% of the time. If you're not so good at one of the other skills, then that's the area that you need to work on. And that goes along with your technical and strategic and tactical training as well. You always want to maintain your strengths and enhance your weaknesses. Thanks for listening to High Performance Training PST, and we look forward to seeing you at the top.